I got the walk, there's a longboard walk. I know the talk, the longboard talk.
It may be unlucky for some, but it's lucky for us tonight because for episode 13, on the 13th, we're joined by dual world champion Harley Ingleby to speak about what's been going on in the longboarding world for our former world champ and where he's been and what he's been up to. But first, let's take a lap around this beautiful golden country of ours, starting at the top right-hand corner this week. She's back from a week off. Kira Molnar, how was your fortnight?
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty busy, actually. I worked a lot and coached a lot and managed to get a surf in, so that was a good week.
That's a fantastic week. You look happy. You look like you've been out in the sunshine. Shawnee McEwen, the Gold Coast, how has it been down there?
The start of the week wasn't too bad, but then, yeah, she turned to custard this morning. There was nobody out there. But, yeah, hey, it's a lot of sand everywhere and that, and we can just hope that we're going to get even better banks now that we're coming in towards the northerlies.
Well, it's good to hear. And I know a couple of the photographers have been posting on Facebook saying they are waiting for the next swell to arrive. We had Jack Entwistle momentarily, but it looks like he's ducked back out again for a second. So we'll skip past Byron Bay all the way down to the sunny shores of Sydney. And in the background, Matty Chinosky, looks like you've been getting some big waves this week, my friend.
Geez, I keep saying it every week, but it's been the best winter I've ever remembered. And sunny Sydney. It's crazy. Today was almost like spring. Today it was like 25 degrees. Water's pretty warm. Head high peaks everywhere. And the barrels have just been insane. Breaks that just they're not consistent pumping. The sand's really good from, Cronulla all the way up to Palm Beach and everywhere in between. And it's, just so stoked.
Cool. Let's all move to Sydney.
What about the broken board, though? Tell us a bit about
So it was Sunday. It was Sunday, Arvo. The swell had dwindled a little bit. I had a morning surf. Posted some pictures up this morning, actually, of that morning surf I had. It was just testing out another new board. Felt good. That afternoon, it was like shoulder high, still offshore. I thought it's epic. It's going to be a nice afternoon of surfing. And we got 4 feet, 5 feet, and then a big black sort of line came in, and banks are good. So I just took off, bottom turned, and it didn't let me out. I actually think the leg rope had more to do with it snapping than the wave itself. I tend to think the way your board moves and the wave is contorted when you have a leash pulling you back down under the surface. But snap, one of my favorites. It's a Ray Gleave replica. It's something Ray would have ridden in the late 90s. Single fin, bit of edge, but hey, a lot of people on shortboards, they just couldn't access those big moving peaks, and the longboard was perfect.
Yep, I saw the waves in question, and you would have been a bit of a swim for your board had you not had the leash, I reckon. But well done for pulling in, mate. Looks like Jack's on mute, so we'll dodge him again for just a second. Sculling in the background down in the COVID state, within 5 kilometres of his home. Happy birthday, happy 21st to our Nathan Rivalland. Woohoo!
In the background, thanks Weeksy. Good to be here, guys. And Vico's been pretty good to me today. It's been beautiful and sunny all day, and the only way we can really go and see anyone is in the surf. So I just had this awesome surf with like 30 of my mates today. It was just epic. So it's great. Also great to have Harley on tonight. So it's gonna be sick.
Unreal, mate. And just quickly pan the camera around, show us where you are and who you're with.
So I'm just at the dinner table. So I got mum, dad, and my sister here, and then girlfriend here. So we're just having some Japanese for dinner. Getting through this, just about to demolish this pork bao bun. So
all right, I'll accept that. That's a pretty elaborate hoax if you just wanted to have the night off. So Nate's going to disappear in 5 minutes or so. So thanks for joining us on your birthday, Nathan. And finally, let's. Got blings and bells and whistles going off all over the place. Back up onto the northern New South Wales coast, just below the Queensland border. G'day, Jack Entwistle. How's the audio going, mate?
I just made it. I'm on the missus's laptop. Just she was big day at work, so mate, all good. Couple of good waves around home. It's been a good run, and all is good. Good to have Harley on.
Well, mate, since you've probably spent as much time travelling the world and competing alongside him, why don't you introduce this week's special guest for our viewers, please?
Seen a couple of fun travel experiences. Yeah, welcome Harley, 2-time world longboard champion, and yeah, all round shredder.
Cheers, mate.
Woo!
Stoked to be on.
So I'll do a bit more of a fancy introduction, but Harley's one of those guys that, as a commentator and well, for beach coordinators and for judges and fellow competitors, probably equally ominously, is a guy you expect to see 2 excellent scores next to his name, and I've seen it in knee-high slop and I've seen it in double overhead perfection. Welcome to the show, 2 times world longboarding champion and shredder, new dad, all-round nice guy, Harley Ingleby. How have you been, mate?
Yeah, really well. Sort of battling the sniffles. The little one brought a little nose flu home from daycare already. So other than that, no, it's yeah, everything's been great here. We've had like Sydney, we've just had a crazy run of surf and swell, and yeah, been fortunate to still be able to get out and make the most of it in the mornings, and yeah, a lot of chasing the little one around the house through the day most days, and yeah, pretty blessed and lucky to be up here, and it's kind of life as normal up here on the North Coast for the most part. So yeah.
Where are you exactly these days? Because are you still in the Emerald area, or have you moved since then?
Yeah. I've from the house I grew up in Emerald Beach, I've moved all of about 150 meters around the corner, and yeah, I bought here about 10 years ago, just one block away from where I grew up, and yeah, it's a super nice little village here. We've sort of, whether it's a southerly or a northerly, we've sort of got 2 options for surf, and they're both swell magnets. So yeah, I don't usually have to travel too far to get in the water, that's for sure.
It is a pretty beautiful part of the world, and why would you travel more than 150 metres from that board collection up the hill?
Yeah.
Been lucky enough to see your old man's board collection. It must be great to grab one of those shooters and trot off down the road.
Yeah, I definitely, I used to do it a lot when I was a teen. I used to pick and choose, just that, depending on the mood, riding all sorts of old boards, and like the first boards I had were boards Dad shaped for me, and they were both sort of soft rail single fins. That's what I learnt to surf on when I was 4 or 5. But yeah, just growing up with that crazy, the whole evolution of surfing there, literally above my head. I was always had a more open mind to making the most out of the surf and stuff like that. And I think it's a lot to do with why I've sort of had as much success as I have, and it's just mostly down to I was always keen to get in the surf, because there was always something new to try and something to explore.
Awesome, mate. And I think we've covered as a panel, we're pretty much big believers in riding everything and having a quiver. Now, it is Nathan Rivalland's 21st birthday down there in Victoria, and I think if we need to let him get a question or something out the way before he takes off and continues about his birthday celebrations, because he looks like he's jumping out of his skin. And Nate, we don't want to hold you up tonight on your big special night, but I know that you were really keen to ask a couple of questions of Harley.
Yeah, so before I go, I just sort of wanted, I guess the best lead-in first question would be just to ask how you kind of got into surfing. What, where was it, and who was it that you were with when you started surfing?
Yeah, like I said, Dad made me my first board. He was always a super keen surfer. The first board he made me was just out of 2 snap shortboards, and he just joined stripped the glass off them, butted them together, and shaped me a little 5'6" soft rail single fin out of it. And we're actually just doing the same thing now. We've just joined 2 snapped old boards, and we're going to shape Isla, my daughter, her first board the same way. So which should be really cool. Yeah, Dad was obviously my biggest early influence, and just growing up here on the Coffs Coast, and particularly the northern beaches of, there's just been such a crazy strong group of surfers from around here. Like John Brazen, for instance, he was here. We part of the Woolga Longboard Club, and yeah, it was a super strong club when I was a young kid. Had such a big talent depth right through all through the age groups. So yeah, I mean, I just had a really big all-round surf influence with shortboarders and longboarders growing up around here, and yeah, just flowed on. Just kept doing it.
Epic. Oh, good to hear.
Mm.
That's really cool what you're doing with your daughter too, like starting it the exact same as how you started.
Yeah. So we'll probably even somewhat straight up, very similar. Just a little bit more feminine looking, but it should be a really cool project, and it'll be interesting to watch her catch her first waves on it. That's for sure. I can fully remember some of my very, very first surfs on my one, so it'll be interesting to see if it ends up putting that kind of impact on her life as well.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, great to hear. Epic.
Mm-hmm.
So, Nathan, do you need to run away, mate? Looks. You're looking.
Yeah, I probably do have to go. Dinner's sort of just arrived. So, but yeah, thanks for having me on. And Harley, I'd love to chat to you another time. Sorry, it's
mate,
I'm excited with
any time, and enjoy your birthday.
And it's about as big as it gets in Victoria at the moment with this lockdown. So,
Well,
but thanks heaps.
You can't get much better gift than that, mate. You get to speak to double world champ on your birthday.
I know. Doesn't get much better.
A party would be better, don't lie.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all good. Thanks, guys.
The invite list to go to the wave pool down in Melbourne.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, actually. I was having a surf today with one of the guys from the pool who lives down here, and I said, we didn't have to pay anything to book this spot out. So it was, because obviously the pool, you got to pay so much to book it out for the day. And it was on my mind to do it, but with it not open.
But for the day of the Oz Longboarding Challenge, Harley will be able to surf for free at the wave pool for sure, Nate.
Oh, yeah, try to see if we can make something work.
He's already been. What about us? What about us guys? He's already been. Don't worry about him.
Back of the line. And you too, Molnar. Don't you laugh? You've been there as well. You're late 1 and 2. But so Harley, actually talk to us about that since Nate's here as well. What's been your experience with the wave pool so far? You've been out to Kelly's Ranch as well, as far as I recall.
Yeah, they're both absolutely incredible. Just proper mind-blowing experiences, both of them. Both totally different. Kelly's, I guess if you were just to pick one wave, I think Kelly's is, being a minute-long ride and just that long of a perfect point. It's pretty hard to compare from that sense. But I'd say as an overall day experience, my day at Urban Surf, there was 50-something surfers, and we all got sort of 4 or 5 half-hour sessions, and every single one of us just could barely move at the end of the day. We were so surfed out from riding waves, which when I left Kelly, you sort of go, oh man, I could have surfed another 40 of those waves and still would have been wanting more. So I think the Urban thing, you really get your proper surf fix, and just getting ejected out of a barrel and pulling off and watching 5 guys do the same thing right behind you. It's got its own special merits, Urban Surf. So they're both.
I'll tell you what, Barton was posting during the week the new settings, Ocky's video of the new settings up there at Yapoon. I wouldn't mind giving that a tickle as well.
No, it'd be nice to compare that one too in the mix. Maybe one day.
And so I've put it onto Brady Bunch mode so that the viewers at home can see everybody, so you can see how distracting Nathan's been with his family and his cat.
Oh, my cat's all over me. I better head off, guys, but thanks so much for having me on, and look forward to chatting you next time, Harley.
Yeah,
we'll see you at the pool.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
So, Kira, as an up-and-coming pro, you must have some questions to be able to take advantage of this opportunity to speak to one of arguably Australia's best longboard competitor that I've seen in the last, 15 years. Any questions for Harley on what makes him tick as a competitor?
Yeah, I've definitely got one, but feel free not to give too much away if you don't want to. But pre-heat surf or no pre-heat surf, and what's your prep before an event kind of thing?
I will usually go for a surf before for an event. That's just my routine anyway. I'm always up before the sun, whether the surf's crap or it's pumping here at home. So for me, the second surf of the day is usually always better than the first. So sort of just to get the body moving and all that. I've never been one to sort of stretch or exercise or do any cross training. So just getting in the water and getting limber that way, that's sort of always been my ritual. But with regard to
just to butt in there, Harley, how old are you now?
37.
Yeah. Okay. see how that.
I feel like I need to start stretching for sure. Maybe a little bit of cross training coming up in the near future. But no, I'm still. I don't know. I guess I've just been able to maintain my surf fitness just by surfing. So, touch wood, that remains for at least a little while. But yeah, other than that, with regard to competing, it wasn't something I really thought about, I guess, in my early years of competing. And you'd sort of just go through stages where you were getting good results consistently, and there'd be times where you weren't so, or whatever. And it took me kind of a long while to kind of figure out things about myself, just my own the psychology of myself, and when I was doing well and when I wasn't doing well. And most of the time it was, I actually sort of discovered that if I'm not nervous and I'm not feeling the pressure, I don't do that well, which is kind of, I've spoken to sports psychologists and they've sort of said that's actually quite a hard thing to create in yourself because, and I guess that's...
you mean hard to create? I mean, it was hard.
Yeah, I mean, if you turn up to an event and the waves are crap and maybe there's no money on the line, not that I really ever thought about the prize money, to be honest, very often, hence why I'm in sport of longboarding and not golf or something else. But yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just at times you just want it more, want to win more than other times. And when that want builds up in me, for whatever reason, that was when I'd sort of get the best out of myself. And then other than that, I think listening to the right music or whatever, little things like that would sort of help a little bit. But for the most part, it was more just this internal sort of, want to win that was just, not always there necessarily. So.
And do you have a favourite song that you listen to?
No, I did just have, I've had multiple playlists over the years, but I guess just I'd sort of to tap into just the total froth mode. I grew up watching a lot of Taylor Steele's movies back in the day and Justin Gaines movies as well. So I'd just have a bunch of those old playlists and that'd sort of just channel me into grom and froth. So I'd just some short, fast punk pretty much, a lot of that sort of music. But yeah, that sort of thing. But that was, no, I don't have any weird sort of superstitious things that I'd go through or anything like that.
Cool.
We were listening to Katy Perry that one year in China, I remember. Don't lie.
Yeah, and I didn't do real well that year, remember? Which year in China are you talking about?
I'm thinking, which Katy Perry song were you listening to?
oh, there's a few.
So you've had some upsets, some disappointments along the way as well. I've seen a couple of times where I felt like you were totally robbed in heats, and you've sort of dealt with it pretty well and wandered off. And but you've also got that little look in your eye that you didn't like it that much. Michael Cottier has sent through an interesting question as the world's oldest pro surfer. He wants to know, obviously, 2 world titles as your highlights as far as good results. Do you remember the worst times? Do you blank them from your head, or do you use them as a force to focus on to improve your result?
To be honest, I don't know. I think if you really want to be a good competitive surfer, you've got to be able to let go of the losses and not let them sort of sit on you too much. And now I've always felt like I've taken my losses pretty well. But there are ones, there's only one really in particular that I know really fired me up and made me realise how much I wanted to win a world title. Was my second year on tour. I won the first event of the year in France, and so I went into the second event in Sano leading the tour, and I ended up, Ned Snow dropped a 10 on me in the first minute of the heat in the quarterfinals. I lost the quarter and Bonga went on to win. And it wasn't until it sort of just slipped out of my hands and I had it in that situation that I was just like, I knew I wanted to win a world title. Obviously that was the goal, but it really sort of set something off off inside me. And that next year, wanted it extra bad, more than ever. And I ended up in the same situation. I won the first event of the year in Tahara, Japan, and going into the second event in the Maldives, it was just like the pressure was crazy. Like, it was next level, and especially having that sort of harsh memory of the last year sort of thing. And fortunately that one worked out well. I had to surf against Phil in the semi, and it was Phil Rasman, and it was whoever won that heat was going to win the world title. So it was good to sort of get that one out for sure.
That was a close final too, actually, wasn't it?
Sorry?
That was a close final as well, wasn't it? It was like a point or something difference?
Yeah, I can't even remember. It's like, at the time, it just becomes just almost like out of body experience. It's like, I don't really remember much after just the siren going and running up the reef.
Hey, Harley, another one of Michael Cottier's questions was the best waves that you've had in a contest. You just mentioned a couple of cool locations there. But first of all, it must be so frustrating. I'm assuming there was only a couple of events on tour when you came second. So it must be so frustrating, because when someone drops a 10 on you in a quarter, there's not really, your hands are kind of tired. You're up against it from the beginning. So I really feel your pain there. That's rough for sure. So it must suck not having had other opportunities at the time to, fight back throughout a year. But what are your best waves like in contests that you can remember?
Probably, there was a couple of years in France where some of the rounds, just the beaches there at Anglet and stuff, was super good. I can remember past a point when I won my first world title, the waves were insane for that event. And I would say Papua New Guinea was bloody amazing. It was a bummer that wasn't able to keep running for a few years. I don't know, where else have we had events? I know Jack and I, like non-world tour events, there's been, obviously domestically Australia, we've had some crazy waves at events. I can remember seeing some crazy early malfunction days up at the Superbank. It was just like, guys are getting so piped.
What about
like that, so.
What about Sri Lanka? Did you guys get good waves in Sri Lanka when it was on that point?
Yeah, at Agron Bay, it was really good. That was again a super amazing wave.
Yeah.
I was first heat of the round and on call every day for that event. I just remember that event was torture, because I was up at like 5 every morning and up the point. It was like a pretty long walk, having a free surf pretty much in the dark, because they were running the women's QS at the shortboard QS at the same time, and like the start of the round was always, we didn't know who was on, but it was just like game mode just every morning. It was didn't really want to be the first heat of the day, and but so I don't really remember that with the huge fond memories, but the waves were good for that contest for sure.
So what's your idea of a perfect longboard wave then? And I ask this question because obviously I'd get crucified if I don't ask you about the change of criteria and how that's as far as competitive longboarding is concerned. But what would you, in your mind, if you could create the Kelly pool of longboarding, what would that wave look like for Harley Ingleby?
Look, I think Kelly's pool is pretty damn perfect for longboarding, to be honest. It's a long point, it barrels, it has nose ride sections, open face. It's pretty good. It would definitely work. But I don't know. I just think with regard to competing in longboarding, it should just be well-rounded. Like, it needs to be a bit of everything. It shouldn't be a one-event world tour or whatever. And I don't think it should be I only think we need one criteria. And to be honest, I don't think any of the 10 criteria I've seen in my times competing, it's not the written word that matters. It's how it's translated and stuff like that. It's all just the same thing written differently, pretty much. It's how those scores come out. That's the important thing, and what dictates the way the surfers react and surf. But for my mind, I guess a lot of the longboarding I looked up to when I started, it was the best Aussie guys like Dave Simons and Ian Bell and GT and Jai Burns and Dane Wilson, and he was obviously the more traditional style, and like those guys all charged, and they all surfed small waves really well, and like internationally, like guys like Bonga Perkins, that was what I sort of just got to, what really drew me to the sport was just that being able to have one sort of board and be able to enjoy the surf, whether it's triple or plus overhead or knee high, it works sort of thing. So I think the criteria I think they should more adapt the tour to be like the shortboard tour. They've only got one criteria for the shortboard tour, but they focus on different elements of it depending on the location. Whether it be Pipe or Tahiti, obviously it's all about barrel riding, trestles, not that's on tour anymore. It's all performance. If they go to J-Bay and Bell, it's all about big, powerful combinations. So I think if longboarding could work out its own version of that and really utilize not just niches of the sport, but really bring the whole international bigger picture of it together, I think that's where the sport could really go to another level. And like shortboarding, there's going to be guys who specialize in one and the other, but then there's going to be the guys who sort of can do it all, and they're the ones that I think should be fighting for world titles, and the best of a few different types of conditions.
We've seen someone like you mentioned Phil a minute ago, so Brazilian dual world champion Phil Harshman, and from his first world title to his second world title, his surfing was totally different. Which do you prefer?
Yep. Probably the later. Phil's an amazing surfer. He's just so raw, and even though he's changed and he's doing a lot more sort of traditional surfing now, he still just has that raw power. And if there's a 6 foot plus section coming at him, he's still just going to absolutely hammer it. He just used to let that beast out a lot more back in the day, pretty much. And we had the waves on tour for him to do that. That 1 year in France, he was just on another level, tearing free surfing. You could just see he was just the man to beat. Whether you thought the style was great or not, everyone on the beach unanimously was just like, this guy is killing at this event. Like, he was ripping.
Do you get like that? Like, do you get to the point where it's just you've got an it's your time? I've seen you at the Whalebone on more than one occasion where it's like knee-high mud. I wouldn't get out of my car to even think about going down the beach. And you've gone out there and found 2 8.5 plus waves. Is that, how much of that's mindset and how much of that's just pure time in the ocean and how much of that is willpower?
I think it's probably a little bit of everything, but it's, for me, at least those Whalebones, again, I'm still such a frothing surfer. I literally will get out of the bloody car to surf that crappy surf if that's what I've got to deal with. Like, there's so many days of the year when Emerald is horrible and I am the only guy out, and I've surfed it 3 days in a row and I'm the only one out. And there's like kids that are literally less than half my age and they're not going out. I'm just like, well, I think maybe that's sort of why I got where I got, because I just was always keen, just needed to be out there always, no matter what, on something.
Absolutely, and having that.
I think that timing and that sort of picking the bits of crap out of the lumps at the Whalebone, it's just it becomes instinct because that's all you're doing all the time. So I think it's just luck is always a part of it though. There's no doubt. If it doesn't want to dish you that wave, even if it's perfect, it's just not going to happen sometimes. But yeah, you can definitely increase your chances by being able to read the play, and yeah, for sure.
It's fairly interesting because one of our earlier guests was Ray Gleave, and I know from over the years dealing with Ray, especially the fact that most finals in those days were surfed in onshore slop in the afternoons. He used to just say, I love it when it goes like this, because he always used to go out and didn't matter what the conditions were back home, he'd go out and surf. It'd be howling northerlies, blue bottles everywhere. He'd still go and have a surf and enjoy it. And he did. He enjoyed surfing every day. And you sound as though you've got the same mindset as what Ray does.
Yeah. No, Ray's, don't have to say too much about Ray. The guy's an incredible surfer. He actually just seeing Maddie's snapboard in the background, it hands me back to a memory of one of my earlier. I wasn't actually at the event, but I can just remember this shot, and the word got back really soon from one of the Aussie titles that I think it was really big yelling up, and Ray was just packing huge right-hand closeouts on a board exactly the same. And Ray's an amazing surfer. He's a lot of my early inspiration, or just general inspiration, came from guys like Ray.
I was gonna mention that actually, Harley, because my earliest memories of you are actually coming down to. I remember seeing you at when I got into the juniors. You were sort of just transitioning out of it with guys like Dan Pioli and Craig Harvey and guys like that. But at that time when I began, there was still a lot of 50-50 style longboarding, and you could go into a heat where you'd have Dane Wilson. I could be a junior, you could be you, and you could have Jai Burns or something like that, and it'd be exciting because you didn't know what surfer or style was going to prevail. And your style back then, not that you've changed. I mean, obviously your athleticism has changed in the way that where you put your board, but I just remember you having a really silky smooth drop knee, and your transitions were always crisp, as they are now. And I think that's watching guys like Ray subconsciously. It's like a shortboarder watching Curran or Slater. Ray or Joel is sort of like our sort of benchmark. So I can actually see that in your surfing even these days. And that's the highest compliment to you and Ray.
Cheers, mate. No, his drop knee was the one that everyone wanted to emulate. That's for sure. It's Dane Wilson's too. Dane has an incredible drop knee turn. It's just, I think the drop knee is an interesting. A lot of people don't utilize it, and they don't realize how efficient of a turn it is. It's like if a wave hasn't got enough juice to do a flat-footed cutback, a drop knee is just so much better for pushing through a weak section. You can create so much more leverage and whip out of a turn doing it.
JB and I were just talking about your drop knee yesterday. It's so weird. He said he brought you up, and he said it's just amazing that often a lot of people may not realize, but you have the ability to incorporate that drop knee in a functional aspect that links up for the next section, and then you'll hammer it shut with like a nice solid controlled cutback. And we'll just couldn't believe it. We were just mentioning it yesterday, and we just brought it up. So small world.
That's classic.
He's claiming the Woolgoolga days and that he taught you how to do the drop knee.
There was,
no comment.
There was a lot of good inspiration in the Woolgoolga Longboard Club, believe me. It was, yeah.
But look, I for one am a big fan of the performance side of longboarding as well. I love a good drop knee. I love a great nose ride in the critical part of the wave. But I also like variety rather than repetition. And in my mind, 3 nose rides on one wave is not variety. So how did you see it as the change as a competitor? Did you have to dial that out of your surfing? Because all of a sudden, instead of going hard off the bottom and putting your board up to 12 o'clock and throwing the back out of a lip, like you and Taylor Jensen, probably and Pioli actually, good examples of people who can proficiently go upside down on a longboard, which I love to see. And then on the same wave, big roundhouse cut back with a nice drop knee, and then on the same wave, a 5-10-5 combo, and then a closeout maneuver. Did you find yourself having to rein yourself in, wind yourself back? Was there some maneuvers and turns that, with the new interpretation of the criteria, if you'll excuse that way of phrasing it, did you find yourself having to stop doing things, or was it more just about doing the same things in a different way stylistically?
There was definitely the later couple of years at China, like everyone was just baffled and everyone changed their surfing, and it wasn't for the better. Everyone knew they could do less to get more. It was pretty wild, and it was literally, and it wasn't like we understood what WSL were trying to do. It was a point break, and they were trying to make it more focused on the traditional stuff, but they weren't rewarding the guys who were actually nose riding correctly well. So the guys like a classic example like Antoine or even Edward, Ben Skinner's good too. He might have got a hang 5 that was super fast, super high, super in the pocket. Board was really parallel in trim, going fast, and on a big wave, all on the line, and it would score a lot lower than someone who was doing a hang 10 straight down the face, held, all hunched over and weird and not in trim and ploughing water. And it basically just came down to like who can do 3 hang 10s on a wave, and it doesn't matter how you got there, how you got back, and all of these things. So it was a really strange time there for a little bit, and everyone was scratching their head. And only like Piccolo was one of the guys who obviously just got onto it real early and was just like, I'm just building boards to do this.
Yeah,
like,
wide nose.
And look, he won the game. Like, and that's what competing is. It's not like necessarily surfing how you want to surf, and I definitely don't contest surf the way I free surf a wave. That's not what you're there to do. You're there to, like, the guys up in the box and the conditions and reading the play, and that's just what it is. It's and if you think it's something else, you're kidding yourself. I think a lot of the times, but I guess I don't know. Like the way that they've kept on going toward the traditional, I figured from what I've seen, I had a year off with Ola coming along and getting married, and it was just a good time to have a bit of a break from comps and stuff. And just with Relic and WSL, it was just no way I could physically afford to do all of it with the time or the money. So it was interesting to sit back and watch it, and they definitely started to reward the traditional stuff a lot better, which was good. But yeah, there's still heaps of weird things I saw in the judging, which I think a lot of people would agree with. But look, hopefully it all gets figured out after this. There's been a long break now, so hopefully when it all comes back, I sort of look at it with fresh eyes, and hopefully there's some sponsors on board and they can really sort of dial it in and get the right surfing for the conditions and the locations. I thought it was pretty wild. It was pretty wild to see them force the hand of guys to ride soft rail boards, windy 6 foot left in Taiwan. It was just wrong. Like, if guys, I mean, it's one, it just was what it was. Like, the guys could have rode a board with edge and still just rode to the nose riding criteria, but no one was prepared for it. Everyone was just like, had their flip tails and they were stuffed pretty much.
Yeah.
It was,
and we've seen a massive change in equipment over the last 2 years. Like the team rider, the guys who are getting free boards, the shapers must be spewing because they've had to replace their entire rider selection. Have you noticed any change in your equipment that you're riding just when you go?
No, not really. No, not at all. I haven't. I mean, competing's one thing and surfing's another. I don't let my day-to-day surfing enjoyment of the sport and all that, and competing, that's a whole other thing. My contest boards are still my 2 go-to performance longboards, and I've got my 10-foot nose rider, which I've won Australian logger titles on and done really well in a lot of nose rider events. The same white, blue and orange board I've had for years. It's still one of my absolute favourite boards to ride when it's small and running. And yeah, if I had went on tour that last year, I'm sure I would have had to try and figure out how to fit it in a 9.6 board bag and get it over there. I would have been in the boat with everyone else.
So would you say that was your favourite board? Because you just got a viewer question from Marlon saying, do you have a favourite board of all time? So with that one that you just said, would that be your favourite board of all time? Or
that nose rider definitely spends a lot of time in my car. But if I was on my favourite boards are obviously my good wave boards, because you want the surf to be pumping, and if you're pulling out your favourite good wave boards, that's when you're really enjoying the surf. Like, I love making the most of when it's small and peeling, no doubt. And yeah, getting a good elevated hang 10, it's one of the best feelings in surfing, no doubt. But I don't know, the feeling of sticking 9 foot of rail in a good sized tube, I'm sure Maddie will agree, with that snapboard. In fact, it's a pretty bloody hard feeling to beat as well. So yeah, it just depends. But I definitely have always just growing up on the Coast Coast. I mean, we have some good point breaks around here, but the Hollow Beaches is sort of always where my heart's been at for the most part.
Hey, Harley, on that, you're right about the 9-foot board and a barrel and surfing waves like you surf a lot. You know, that easy entry, and, you know, I grew up watching a lot of the same guys as you, and even the guys in the 60s, and you had access to all that footage as well. There is just certain things you can do on a longboard in proper waves that you can't do on a shorter board. You know, Bonga Perkins is a testament to that. So is Joel. But I was going to say, I have personally seen, coming from crowded Sydney beaches and traveling regularly as well, the advancement of quivers. And you've always been an advocate for quivers, you know, ever since the old Golden Breed days, you know, with your little quad fin setups with Tolhurst and stuff, that, you know, all the ads, you're on different boards, you're on an old Mal or a log, or you're on a performance longboard or a little quad. Do you think that advancement of quivers has affected maybe where that criteria has gone with longboarding now, or is there other agendas at play?
Look, I don't know. I can't really speak for if there's other agendas at play. Obviously, people love to speculate about that sort of stuff. But look, I mean, there's no doubt the sport probably went too far down one way with regard to competition, and traditional surfing was being neglected. There's no doubt about that, and I don't think anyone who's been on tour for the last 15 years would disagree. But yeah, it was just, I think, you know, with regard to quivers, I mean, just traveling with longboards, I mean, yeah, it's hard work, but you're always going to have probably the best board in the lineup. Like, I think, yeah, whether you do get skunked on your surf trip and the waves are this big, or it's, you know, I did one coaching camp with Surfing Vic, and before the event, it was, before the camp, it was like macking bells, like as big as it gets kind of thing. And I just had my longboard for the longboard camp, but that was fine. Like, it worked. And a lot of guys sort of pulled me up in the car park. They're like, "What are you doing? Like, I think you got the wrong board, mate." I'm just like, "I don't think so. I think all those guys on their 7.6s are on the wrong board. They haven't got enough paddle power to chase these things down." And yeah, I definitely got my share of waves that morning. And just like on the random open beaches here, you have that ability to really enjoy your surf. And I think a longboard, the long rail really comes to life once it gets overhead. And it's sort of when, for me, when some of the best feelings is like a roundhouse, I think, on a longboard is totally different feeling to a roundhouse on a shortboard. Like, fundamentally and technically it's the same, but just the pushback and the drive and how long that turn goes for, and the feeling, I don't think it really compares. And there's a lot of things in the sport of longboarding that shortboarders don't give longboards credit for. It's part of why I've always been so into it. Like, I've always ridden everything, but it's just one of the many reasons why I love the sport.
I love floaters on a longboard as well. I think just having the length of the board spread out along the whitewater, you can really use the foam and get down really long sections and stuff. But there's something about getting barreled on a longboard. It just feels better. I'm sure that most people will be aware, but for those who aren't aware, Harley doesn't just ride longboards, and out on a shortboard, he's just as likely to be doing aerials and things. He's a very high-level shortboarder. Did you ever get into the QS side of things for shortboards, Harley, or was your competition focus always been longboards?
Look, I never really. I used to do a lot of events through my high school years, and I was having decent success on the shortboard. But yeah, I don't know. Even with regard to longboarding, when I got into it, it was just, I very much was just in it for fun. Like, it was just going away and traveling with friends, and results were secondary. It wasn't really a profession in my mind at the time. And I guess shortboarding, I guess toward the end of high school, I was sort of having to make a decision. Like, the pro junior circuit was just starting up then. It was pretty new, and kind of we did a few events. I think it was like one state title or something like that, and just guys that you'd sort of travel with at one or two events, and you'd see them at the next event. There'd be a new sticker on their board, and they'd be too cool to talk to you, and you're just like, man, it was just so much ego and bullcrap. I mean, it seems like the kids these days, it's not like that anymore as much. I don't know if it's just because I'm older or whatever, but it was really bad like that. It felt like for me coming through. So I didn't really have a major sticker on the board or anything like that. Other than like FCS, I've been with them since I was about 15. But yeah, no big sponsors or anything. So yeah, I don't know. It was just, I found it pretty weird and a lot of ego. And the flip side was longboarding, going away to longboard events with my dad and the family and, you know, all the other crew from Woolgold Longboard Club, and having, you know, seeing guys like Bonga Perkins or Joel coming from international, and then all the top Aussie guys who were like knocking on the door of world titles at the time, and they were just like, hey Harley, you coming to the pub with us? Like, we're going to do this, we're doing that, and like, you coming to the next event over here? And it was just like, you're instantly part of the family, and it was just so much more fun and inclusive, and it was just no ego, and yeah, it was just the polar opposite. And it wasn't that I wanted to compete, or it wasn't results based as to why I made that decision. It was just, that looks fun and I'm having fun, and it was just what I did. And then as soon as did the world tour, and then first year I got third, I was just like, holy crap, I got to have a dig at this. Like, it just snowballed and it just went that way. But it was definitely not a results driven decision in my in the early interim, for sure.
And so what does it then do to you as far as what, you know, you become world champ, and then a few years later become world champ again? Does it then get harder to, I know that there's two things at play here from what I can see. There's the belief that, I can be the best in the world if I get the waves and I do my thing. I can be number one on those days required. But at the flip side of that, is it kind of like, well, I've got my world titles now, it's hard to get motivated to get into that competitive spirit you spoke about before? Where do you sit in that?
Yeah, personally, I don't know. Like, I get asked this a lot, actually, because I had last year off. I think everyone just assumes I'm done with it. And I think a lot of people assume that I flicked it because of the criteria change too, and it's just so not the case. It was purely a financial decision for the most part. And I kind of, last year, I really thought, I saw that, you know, Relic, I think we're moving in the more of the direction of where I think there's a better future for the surfers of the sport. And if I was going to spend my hard-earned dollars, I was definitely going to spend it going to surf a good waiting period at Malibu and Lowers over those other locations. So it was just a no-brainer as to regard to that. But I think, it was just, you know, having a baby and getting married and all of those things sort of added up to that. But whether I do it again, I gotta just wait and see what the tour is. I definitely have the belief I could go again and do well. And yeah,
I think I've been reading between the lines, mate. We've just heard you confirm you're coming back.
No.
That was definitely my question.
No, that's what I heard. You had a year off, and look out.
Hey, he is also wearing a Kelly Slater branded T-shirt, so maybe the goat's a bit of a inspiration for a comeback there. Not saying you're old, but you know, you still got another. As far as Kelly's concerned, you'd still have another 15 years to go in your career, mate.
The longboarders, we should have much longer in our tour.
I was going to say, anyone who saw Ray Glebe surfing up at Agnes Water, he could still rattle some cages. And I think the criteria focus is probably making that more possible, because the older guys who aren't quite so explosive anymore, who maybe don't like to do a tail first drop out of the lip on an overhead wave, can surf right through. So do you think there's going to be a specialised selection of locations to try to suit that style of surfing, or has it just come down to who's got the checkbook as far as where the world tour?
Well, I think if they're dead set on trying to make the sport better, they should be going to locations that suit the criteria they want to push forward. There's just no doubt about it. Like, if they want it to be a single fin specific logging style tour, then it should be just really good quality logging style waves. Like, there's no doubt. But yeah, I guess that'll also be a part of sort of whether I come back or not. It'll be
no, it's not.
Just the quality of the
my
waves.
question.
You know,
Stop answering my question.
The output to return. Something's got to be there. I mean, it was different when I was young and I lived at home, and there was nothing, then I've been doing this for a long time. It's kind of, for me now, I'm like, oh man, I've been to the same bloody contest beaches every year for a bloody long time, and I'm pretty ready to like tick off some bucket list waves like cloud break.
You don't want to go to Taiwan again or China?
I would go back to Taiwan for a
Taiwan.
And to be honest, if I was chasing a swell, there's some ways in China too that I would go back there, but I don't know if I could go back there just to surf that left point again. If that was the only, if it was a one-off world title and that was it, and it was like, well, that's not going to cost me my year's salary to go chase it, then yeah, maybe I would do it. But it's it's just what it is. I think having a heap of events is good if everyone's making enough money to warrant it. It's no future for the sport if it's basically kids who are just deferring uni to just go see the world for a bit, and it's not the right pathway for the sport, you know, or the lucky couple that have sponsors. But yeah, I don't know. It's look, we all just want to see the sport where it should be. We all believe in it. We all know that there's as many longboarders out there in the world as there are shortboarders, pretty much.
Sorry, Harley, would you see it as a sensible solution then say, okay, there's 7 events, top 3 results count, something along those lines, do you think would help to alleviate the problem of...
No, I don't think so. I honestly think that 7 events would be horrible for the sport, unless someone just came in with massive money and just went, yeah, like if you come last, you're getting minimum $2,500 for coming last, like US. Like, unless it's something like that, then no, I think the sport needs to get a good, clear direction, whatever that is. Hopefully it's a really big, inclusive one, and it really activates surfers from all around the world and surfs all kinds of waves, and hopefully they make a really good tour of it. And I think 3 events is probably all we need to start, and just make sure they're world-class waves. I don't know if they have to be iconic locations that people will know of and associate with longboarding. They've just got to be really good waves that everyone gets equal opportunity. And if they're going to have a waiting period, whether it's 3 days or 10 days, just got to have something that's like more often than not, they're going to get.
I love the idea of it being
damn good conditions.
Exotic places where you haven't necessarily heard of. Like when you guys were in PNG, I was like, sick. And then, you know, like if it was somewhere different every year and you're just in the jungle in the middle of nowhere in the Philippines or wherever, Samoa, I mean, there's all sorts of places where you could go. But like you say, if it's packaged in such a way that transport, accommodation, everything's provided for the competitors, I think something like that could definitely work, so that, you know, poorer nations, as they come on board as well, have the opportunity to attend just as many events.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting after all this, because I think, like with COVID and stuff, it's we might not be having a tour next. I'd be actually surprised if there were anyone traveling next year. To be honest, it's still probably going to be pretty locked up. So just because some nations might be okay, but I don't know if the whole world will be okay. Where it's like, depending on where you're from, you may or may not, like, people aren't going to be able to do 2 weeks quarantine in a hotel if they come from somewhere that hasn't been deemed, you know, safe to come from or whatever. So
yeah,
I don't know. There'll be hopefully there's a lot of tourist money flying around, like people investing back into tourism and trying to get things in their local regions, because that's what it's going to take. And hopefully
throw the cat amongst the pigeons.
Be a vehicle.
What about if you had identical urban surf waves on each continent, and so you could compete in your heat remotely on the same setting on the same wave, but in 6 different locations? Can you see a future of something like that happening?
I don't think they're going to build them quick enough to get us out of trouble next year. But it's look, you know what? If this thing really if COVID really dragged out and whatever, I think maybe in a decade's time, when there is a lot of these wave pools all over the world, if something like this were to happen again 10 years down the track, maybe those kinds of options would be available, but I can't see that happening anytime soon. In theory, it sounds like that could be an option, but I don't know. There's like, I mean, even Kelly's pool is unbelievably flawless, but it's crazy how much the wind actually can just make a difference. Just the slightest little changes. You're watching guys get, even in that pool, like depending on when they surfed, it's different. It changes. Like it's still not just that perfect, but I don't know. It's definitely the nearest thing to having a properly even playing field. There's no doubt about it.
So, Harley, could you see there being a world champion come out of surfing these wave pools rather than surfing the ocean?
Only if the world titles were determined in those pools and in those pools only. I think if as soon as it went to the ocean, someone who only was a specialist in those would struggle. Like we're saying, you have those heats like over in the whalebone. You really got to know how to pick your lumps to make a score. So I think that's where someone who was a wave pool specialist might struggle or would struggle.
Or in the current in somewhere like Kingscliff, and obviously
the surf fitness would definitely come into it. There's no doubt. Although Urban, I was absolutely rattled how bloody knackered I was after that day. Like you are paddling hard to get, like you're not paddling hard to get back out the back, but you're just so keen to get back out the back. You just like, come on, here it comes. Like so, yeah, you definitely get worn out. It's in at least that setting in that scene, but. I feel like events, if they were in pools, it'd be kind of like, here comes your run. Like snowboarding, you'd be scheduled at a time and you'd be on sort of thing. So to be, and if you're practicing, I guess more practice, it would be, very much more relaxed than people free surfing and paddling against currents. No doubt.
So if you had one of these perfect waves then set up, dialed in just how you like it, bit of meat, bit of barrel, bit of open face, who would be your person, if you had to sit there and watch someone surfing them on a longboard all day, who would you want to watch? Who's your favourite longboarder to watch?
I mean, there's so many good guys. I mean, in a wave pool?
Sorry, just on a perfect wave. I mean, let's just call
on a perfect wave. Okay.
Yeah. Spot X, pumping waves. Who do you want to watch longboard?
Look, I mean, I think. For my mind, growing up, the most inspirational surfer was Bonga Perkins. Seeing him knife a 12-footer from second reef at pipe on a longboard, to me, it was just like, when I was a Grom, it was just like, that's unobtainable. Like, that's just ridiculously crazy, and he kills it at Malibu and everything. So, like, to me, he was like the ultimate longboarder. But, there was guys from Australia that, if they were in the pecking order enough to get those waves at pipe, I'm sure they'd have pulled the trigger and put on a pretty damn good show as well. But I think just, growing up in Australia, we all always looked to the overseas pinnacles, although, so many of our homegrown guys were definitely on a similar level. But for me, it was, Bonga Perkins was the guy I always wanted to watch in pumping surf for sure, on a longboard.
Nice one. I haven't. I've seen a bit of footage of Bonga, but I've never actually met him in real life. But everyone speaks of him very, very highly, and someone of your caliber picks him out of the pack. That's probably something he'd be happy to hear as well. Because I know if you asked 100 people, a good percentage of those would list one Mr. Harley Ingleby as being the favourite to watch go surf some pumping waves, and I certainly have enjoyed it over the years from behind the microphone at events. I'm glad I haven't had to look at you in a coloured jersey at the same time in the water, because I'm far too old and nowhere near good enough to be in a heat with you. But definitely yourself and probably Taylor Jensen are the two I put side by side as being, from the ones I've physically watched, of just being dependable, reliable, always going to bring out a couple of excellent scores. Jack Entwistle, you're right in there in that mix as well. In fact, I remember one particular year at the Whalebone where you got the goods over Harley and had a big impact on us.
You was just said he'd crawl over glass to see Jack, Matt and Harley in a heat together.
Who said that?
It's probably happened.
Gary McCormick.
Tell Gary, if Chuck Weeksy in there, 4-man heat, I'll do headstands. Gary's not a fan of my headstands in heats. He gives me 0 as my wave score if I do them. So, but Sean, next week we've got another legend on, a couple of years more advanced and the opposite gender.
Yeah, from just down the road at Crescent Head. Our guest next week will be Robin Harvey. She grew up in Crescent, started surfing as a kid type thing. She's gone right through all the years surfing. She's still right into it. She's been the first and only female president of.
Yeah. We can cover all that next week.
No, she'll be very interesting. But hey, before you go, Harley, I've seen you surfing the events now 15 plus years. I've seen you go head to head with Josh Constable for years. I've seen you go head to head with Taylor for years. Who has been the competitor that you've come up against the most that has really given you the most trouble to get past?
In obviously the first half of my competitive career, it was Josh for sure. But I'd say overall, like the better part of it in the second half of my long surfing career, it's definitely been Taylor. He's a hard man to beat. There's no doubt. He's such a well-rounded surfer, rides everything very well in all conditions, and he just has, I think, of anyone I know in longboarding, I think he has that ability to like read the play on the day and really see what the judges are rewarding, and he is so quick to be on it, and like he's the one who he has the ability and all that, but I think his competitive nous of like reading the play as to what they're rewarding and stuff and how to deliver that on a wave is second to none.
I think as true champions both, I think you do what champions do and actually make each other surf better. Nothing more exciting as a commentator, I'm sure Sean as a contest organiser, to find those two names side by side on opposite sides of the draw. I hear from your voice it's coming back. You're coming back, and I really can't wait. I think for those of us, look, I got to say that's what I heard, Harley. I heard you hate the new criteria and you didn't want to do tippy-tappy nose rides. So.
Mate, I grew up doing the Old Male Nationals at Crescent and all those events. I think I just get pigeonholed. It's funny because the shortboarders pigeonholed me as a longboarder. The longboarders pigeonholed me as just a comp guy or something. I don't know. I just feel like I just love surfing. I'll ride anything in any kinds of waves. I think historically I've done way better in the nose rider division at Noosa than I've ever done in the pros. Way more consistently. So it's definitely it's got nothing to do with that. It's more just I just want to see the sport be well-rounded, and I just get more excited personally when the waves are bigger than smaller. That's just me. But yeah.
Sounds to me
good.
like
I just want to see them do it right and do the sport justice, whichever way they do it.
It sounds like we should expect to see a lot more of the orange, white, and blue 10-footer. That's what I'm hearing. I think fellow competitors should be getting concerned. I was trying to go to a segue before by saying next week we have on Robin Harvey, who's a very accomplished female surfer. Have you been as impressed as I have, as pleasantly surprised as well in the massive increase in performance on the women's side of the draw in the last few years in longboarding, because the girls now are just neck and neck, head and head with the guys.
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of it's to do with just there's so many more females longboarding now, and I think too the more traditional equipment has really played to a lot of their strengths as well. And stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's just some of the reasons. Like there's still some of the ladies out there who can definitely perform in good size surf as well, which is great to see. But I just think the overall acceptance of people longboarding in general internationally and I think it just has appealed to a lot more girls than it used to. So there's just a lot more of them in the sport, and we're just seeing the level of them rise really quickly. It's really good. It's about time. We all knew. I mean, it's not about time that they started surfing, but that's not what I meant. It's just like it's just about time that you see that many females getting into the sport, and just good to see them pushing each other. I really feel like there's a good sort of there's a bit more, like, I don't think it's definitely not spoken banter, but you can see like there's a lot more whether it's just video clips or whatever, you can see like they're really trying to really push their surfing, and I'm seeing it a lot on the Instagram clips and stuff like that, and it's the level's really, really high. It's awesome.
I'm excited for what we're going to see in the future. And I think, like you say, we've gone a long way one way. I remember standing on the beach watching you getting taken out by a 360 and a nose heli. Yeah, on the one wave. I saw your eyes that day, Harley. I know you don't totally throw away those lost moments instantly anyway. But I'd love to see you back in a jersey in quality waves doing what you do. It's always a pleasure to watch you surf, and always a pleasure to hear you speak. Actually, you're a thoughtful guy and throw a lot of weight of intelligence and experience behind your opinions. So I'll just throw it quickly around the table. Jackie, I saw you grinning away in the background. Did you have something? Did you have a final question for Harley before we let him go? Or
I think he answered all my questions. It was more to do with just coming back and the way that the tour was going, and if there was anything to change, what would he like to see change to reignite that fire to come back and compete? But I think he kind of nailed it on the head, and yeah, good chat.
It's been a pleasure, and wherever you're watching from around the world, around the country, this has been episode 13. So on the Thursday the 13th, episode 13, but we've been extremely lucky, as I said at the start, to have on board none other than Mr. Harley Ingleby. Harley, thanks so much for taking time out from your young family and busy schedule. If you're just about finished with the renovations now, you're saying you just painted that room?
Yeah, just painted. Yeah, sorry, it's a bit echoey in here. No, my office, the rest of the house had been painted, and this was the last room. It just was horrible. And the wife made me finally just rip everything out and bring it up to scratch. But yeah, no, there's always, you know, as a house owner, it's never not all done.
And we've a big debt of thanks to your lovely wife as well for getting you set up on the Zoom meeting for us this afternoon.
Yep. Yeah, this is my maiden Zoom meeting.
You've done extremely well, mate. And if you can link us to any projects and things you've been involved in, we'd love to share it with our Facebook audience. And I love seeing you surf, and especially getting barreled on the Mals. If you can get some more footage of that with your GoPros, that'd be fantastic. But on behalf of all our viewers, thanks so much for your time and your insights. And some things, clearing up some controversies as well at the same time. Well done, mate. Maddie, Jack, Sean, Kira.
Not controversies.
So, never controversial, but always worth listening to. That's been episode 13. We'll see you next week with Rob and Harvey for episode 14 on Oz Longboarding.
Cheers, guys.
Okay.
I never talk